Good day and welcome. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today. Thank you for joining me and my distinguished guests. My name is Richard Neal. I'm the Managing Director of Sovereign Trust South Africa Limited. And today we will be having a presentation on why Portugal and residency in Portugal is so appealing for South Africans. This webinar is being hosted by Sovereign Trust. And for those of you who do not know who Sovereign Trust is and what we do, we are one of the world's largest independent trust and corporate service providers. In the main, we set up offshore companies, overseas trusts. We can help with international pensions and retirement plans, and a whole lot more. Particularly for today's discussion, however, our offering of residency and citizenship by investment. As I'm sure all of you can appreciate, over the last 18 months, there's been a lot of turmoil within South Africa, and this has led to an absolute explosion in the amount of inquiries we are getting for second citizenship and residency. And by and large, this is all right, today, just to run through what we're going to be talking about and who's going to be presenting. First up, we're going to be listening to Howard Bilton, who's the Sovereign Group Chairman, and he's going to be discussing why Portugal is now the #1 destination for residency. He's going to touch on why Lisbon is so hot, and also on some practical guidance on moving to Portugal. Next, we will be listening to Shelly Wren, who's the head of our business development in Sovereign Trust Portugal. She's going to be touching on the Portuguese residency options as well as the visas that are available to us, but also touching on personal planning, pension planning, as well as the tax considerations one needs to consider. Following on from that, we're going to be hearing from Tara Whiting, who's a consultant at Castlehana Real Estate. So she knows everything about Portuguese property, what to look out for, and she's going to be covering the process and the considerations one would need to bear in mind when moving and buying a Portuguese property. Then we're going to be listening to Guilherme Lopez. He's the Economic and Trade Councillor at the Embassy of Portugal. He's going to be focusing more on actually what would happen if you move to Portugal, the investment opportunities, the incentives, and actually setting up shop and doing business in Portugal. Finally, we're going to be covering questions and answers. Please do post your questions. There is a portal where you can pose questions to the panelists. Just to note that this presentation is being recorded and it will be sent out to all of you along with this presentation. So you don't have to worry about writing things down. It will be provided to you. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the clock as well and making sure that our panelists stick to their allotted times. But we would certainly want to keep up enough time for questions and answers and have an open discussion. Okay, so kicking off with the speakers today, we have Howard Bilton. As I mentioned, he is the chairman of the Sovereign Group. Howard's going to be covering, why Portugal is the #1 destination worldwide for residency. Just a little bit more about Howard. He's got a very long CV, but I'll stick to the most important aspects in my view. So Howard is the chairman and founder of Sovereign Group. He's a qualified barrister. He's a non-resident professor at Texas A&M University. His real passion, however, is the Sovereign Art Foundation, and he is the founder of this. So he's a philanthropist as well. Perhaps for those in the audience, it would be interesting to know that Howard is a fine wine connoisseur, and we know South Africans love their wine. Howard is the principal of Hill Valley Limited, which makes wine in Portugal under the brand name of Howard's Folly. And he's kind enough to send us bottles for us ourselves, but primarily for our clients. So he spoils us as well. Howard actually has first-hand experience of relocating to Portugal, and I'm hoping he can give some nuggets of inspiration and guidance. Howard, I'm going to hand over to you, but please can you explain why Portugal is the #1 destination for residency worldwide, and maybe what can one consider when one decides to relocate?
I sure can. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for the nice introduction. There was some of that you outlined there that I'd forgotten about, actually, but a lot of it I know. And yes, the Sovereign Art Foundation's recently completed its first African Art Prize, so very relevant to that. I'm actually sat in Portugal speaking to you, and I have relocated here from Hong Kong, where I spent 30 years. And there's a number of reasons why I chose to come here. Firstly, because it's lovely, and the Portuguese people are lovely, and the countryside is lovely, and the food is lovely, and the wine is lovely. The climate is lovely. The costs are lovely, because they're quite low. In fact, they're very low, certainly by European standards, and I think even by South African standards, where I know you have tremendous value for money there as well. So everything comes together. You've got great climate, and it's just a great place to be. I think until recently we could have said that Portugal was the undiscovered gem of Europe, but I don't think it's true to say it's undiscovered anymore. It's been discovered in spades, and in particular Lisbon. Yes, it is the hottest city on the planet, by which we mean it's the most popular, because it's not that hot. It's very nice, but it's not that hot. In fact, a fairly temperate climate, because it's on the Atlantic. It's not a coastal city, actually. It sits on a giant isthmus which reflects the light into the city, so you have fantastic light, beautiful buildings, and the Portuguese have been quite clever by requiring that rather than building new, you repurpose the old stock. So there's not so much modern development, but rather beautiful old palacios and ancient buildings which have been refurbished. So the aesthetics are great. I had a reason to move here anyway, obviously, because I've been making wine here since 2003, and Richard kindly alludes to the quality of it, but it is a great winemaking nation. In fact, I would say that if you want great value for money in wine, the two countries you go to, coincidentally, I'm not trying to pour cream down your back too much here, attendees, are Portugal and South Africa, where you can get fantastic wines at reasonable prices. So another advantage, particularly if, like me, you require an almost constant intake of alcoholic refreshment. So your living costs can be cut considerably. So that's sort of background. And if you're not familiar with Portugal, I suggest you visit as fast as possible and come and look and see what it has to offer, because it would be surprising if you weren't charmed by the whole experience. It's a lovely country, and most people who come here immediately fall in love with it. And the natural thing then is to start thinking about moving here. So I know that for South Africans, value for money is of interest. Your rand is weak, and you need to make sure you get bang for your buck. You can find that in Portugal. Together with that, the Portuguese have initiated a number of measures which make them very welcoming. You're going to hear quite a lot about the golden visa. And that has become the most popular residency leading to nationality program, because it's essentially the simplest and easiest. For relatively low levels of investment, you can obtain a golden visa. The most popular way to do this up until now has been buying prime property in Porto, Lisbon, and the coastal Algarve areas. And there, for €500,000, you can obtain a golden visa, which 5 years after granting would ordinarily lead to nationality. And that's quite important for a lot of people, because although after 5 years of having obtained residency in a lot of countries qualify to obtain nationality, the reality is you don't get it, because you have to live there permanently or full time in order to qualify for nationality. That's kind of unstated in conjunction with a lot of programs out there. And indeed, Portugal operates the same system. If you want nationality, you must live here full time for 5 years, with the exception of if you obtain golden visa, when you can qualify for nationality without residing in Portugal. So for those who are looking for an insurance policy, and a standby right to live, this could be the ideal program in that it would allow you to stay in South Africa while starting to qualify for nationality and give you the absolute right to come to Portugal at any time if things changed and there was political turmoil, which is not out of the question in South Africa, I suppose. Then you have a ready-made insurance policy and you can come to Portugal immediately. So that's one of the big attractions. And we also know, and you will know, that it's not that easy traveling on a South African passport. And I suppose this is a legacy issue. And a European nationality would allow you to live and work anywhere within Europe, not just Portugal. So another big advantage, I think. It's an EU nationality. And the residency that you obtain immediately, I believe, although one of the other speakers may correct me on this, gives you travel rights within Europe as well, as it's a full EU residency. So it gives you a lot of travel advantages immediately, and it gives you live and work advantages once you qualify for nationality all over Europe. So I would say it's the ideal vehicle. For those who wish to come to Portugal, there is an additional and considerable advantage in that you can, as a new resident, apply for what is known as non-habitual resident status. The name has been picked with some surprise, really, because to be a non-habitual resident, you must be an habitual resident. So the name is something of an oxymoron, actually. But with that status, the headline is that you get a 10-year tax-free holiday. It's not quite as simple as that. And Shelly's going to tell you more about that. But with careful structuring, it does essentially give you 10 years worth of tax-free living, apart from your pension income, if you have such, will be subject to a 10% tax. That was a recent change. Before that, pension income was also tax-free, but pressure from European Union neighbours who were losing a lot of their pensioners to Portugal and escaping their own European country, coming to find the sunshine in Portugal and paying no tax. And they thought that was grossly unfair, that people had a choice of where they lived and paid their tax. So they put pressure on Portugal to impose 10% tax. Importantly, though, that change did not affect anybody who had already obtained NHR status. So the Portuguese have been very proper, I think, in not applying changes retrospectively. So that change only applied to new NHRs, not old ones, and that is the way that they administer this. So anybody locking in a status in Portugal now can expect that the conditions under which they're encouraged to come here or take out a golden visa will remain, and they will not be altered by future developments. Now, that's important because the world generally, and the European Union in particular, are crying foul about countries who initiate attractive programs to attract new residents and take away tax revenue for themselves. There's a lot of noise about unfair tax competition and about countries doing unfair things to make it attractive to go and live there. They seem to believe that everywhere should be equally horrible, and anybody who does something nice is being unfair. I don't uphold with that view, but nevertheless, that's out there. So there are changes coming. The pressure will continue to mount to make the Portuguese tax system less attractive for new residents. And the word is that there may be a tax, at least on EU residents who move for economic reasons. So there'll be an exit tax. This may or may not apply in South Africa. And typically those work that if you move country for primarily tax reasons, or even just move country at all, you're deemed to have sold all your assets and capital gains taxes applied accordingly, and that discourages you from moving. So certainly for EU people, that is being mooted and is likely to come in. It may not affect South Africa, as it will be in your gift as to whether the South African revenue want to impose some kind of exit tax or not. And I have heard no noise about that. But it kind of illustrates the idea that there's a great deal out there, and it may be wise to take it while it's there and not wait because you don't need it now and hope that it's there when you do. I think the time to act is now, and especially with golden visas, because you don't actually have to move here to obtain one. So it would be no bad thing to lock that in, even if you are thinking that you may not actually wish to move for some time. And of course, you're starting to qualify for the nationality immediately as well. It's not the only way you can immigrate to Portugal, but for a lot of people, they'll want somewhere to live when they get here, will naturally buy a property. So that's a natural route into the golden visa. But there are other ways. You can invest in funds, you can set up an employment-making business, and there are other forms of visa which are available as well, which don't require that level of investment, but those ones require you to move to Portugal to maintain that immigration status and pretty well live here full-time to keep that status. So the golden visa is the only one which doesn't need you to live here. And you can maintain it without doing that. So that's the attraction. It's no surprise that it's been extremely successful, and a lot of new immigrants have moved here. I'm one of them, although I came in when Britain was still a member of the EU before it very unwisely voted to remove itself. So it was very easy, and I could move here at that time with really no formality whatsoever. But that's now changed for Brits, as you'll know. So that's it, really. I think that's a decent summary of why anybody would want to come here, and it's certainly a decent summary of why I came here.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Howard. So, yeah, I think some of the nuggets I got from that is, you want to, and this is a saying that we have in our office, is that you want to live in the sun, but you want to bank in the shade. You don't want to be moving to a dreary country just for Mozzie's sake. And I think Portugal is a very easy fit for a South African lifestyle. So that's fantastic.
Language is Portuguese language is difficult. I think there's no denying that, but nearly everybody speaks English, so that will work. Portugal can be a little frustrating in terms of how slow things happen here and how much bureaucracy there is. But otherwise, I would say that's the only disadvantage, and you get used to that, I suppose, and just temper your expectations slightly. Coming from Hong Kong, where everything happens at lightning speed, that was a big change, and perhaps frustrating initially, and then you've just got to calm down and relax a bit, and everything works.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. South Africans are very used to slow service delivery and delays. So
you're already part of the way there, aren't you? But you'll experience another level here, I can assure you. We have a little joke about the Spaniard talking to the Portuguese, and he asked the Portuguese if they have anything in their language the equivalent to our mañana, and the Portuguese replies, well, nothing which conveys quite that same sense of urgency. And this is something which will become immediately apparent when you set foot in Portugal. But in a way, it's kind of charming. And as I say, I think you're somewhat used to it in South Africa, but this is another level.
Well, thanks very much, Howard. We're going to now move on to Shelly Wren. Shelly Wren is the head of business development at Sovereign Consultoria in Portugal. Shelly has over 30 years experience in investment advisory with particular focus on high net worth investors, and especially within international investment property. Shelly has been with Sovereign Trust for quite some time now and has assisted our clients with visa and residency options, particularly in Portugal. Shelly, we're going to be handing over to you. I think there's been quite a bit of noise about what visas and what residency options work and which don't. Whatever one can take. Can you perhaps run us through the landscape of visas and residency options in Portugal?
Hi, yes, I can. Good morning, everybody. And yes, I'm welcome to everyone on the call today, the South Africans in South Africa and those of you that are perhaps sitting somewhere else in the world as expatriates. I too am sitting in Portugal today, and like Howard, I moved here some 14 months ago. I have a long association with the country, which was my go-to home when I used to leave the Middle East, which is where I've been based for the last 35 years. So I've truly been a global expatriate, and my role has been looking after expatriates and citizens from various jurisdictions around the world to help them understand how to take care of their structuring and planning when they're moving around or potentially changing countries on a permanent basis. So Sovereign is not a business that's new to Portugal. We as a business have been here for 30 years, and we're a full service entity supporting clients, in the main expatriates, looking after their international and their tax planning, both outside of the country and in Portugal. So we have a full team here of accountants, qualified accountants and specialists. And as a result of I suppose the needs of our clients that we work with around the world, it became obvious to the business that the programs in Portugal were becoming more and more popular, and the group put a specialist division in place. And my area of expertise is the Portugal system and the residency programs that exist and how to structure and provide a concierge service to our clients. So the residency programs have exploded in terms of popularity over the last, I would say, 18 months, 2 years, and obviously the pandemic has made people actually sit back and think, well, I might want to have the option to move, I may not want to right now. And that's where the golden visa kicks in a very sort of flexible option for our clients, because not everybody wants to pick up sticks and move, but they would like the right to. And so the golden visa really is a superb option for clients. Yes, it does offer citizenship in year 6 after the full 5 years is completed, but essentially what it does is it gives you the right, an irrevocable right to remain should you want to in Portugal, but you don't have to. Now, clearly, if you do wish to use it to become a resident, then there's a lot of tax planning and structuring that needs to be done. And in particular, as Richard and I will touch on later, for the South African community, there is a very large piece of work to make sure it's an efficient move if you're going to become tax resident here. And all of our clients we bring in under the NHR regime. I think it's important to differentiate that the residency program is the golden visa, but the NHR is actually the function of tax. You only use the NHR if you're going to become resident in the country. And a lot of our clients are using another solution to come and live here, which is the D7 visa, which is actually a function of immigration. Actually means you are coming to live here and you are making that permanent move. And at which point we also provide an end-to-end service to support our clients with that move, with all of our partners that we work with in country. So I think in summary, the majority of what we're seeing is an explosion of interest here for those that are coming to live, work, retire, move their families here. And those clients are using either the D7 or the golden visa, which after a consultation with myself, we understand which direction is best for the family. And then obviously, there was a sort of a misconception many years ago that Portugal was perhaps the place people came to retire. I would say the majority of our clients are coming here as professionals. They are looking to run businesses, set up companies, they're moving their families in, putting their children in school. It's quite a different demographic now for our clients that are coming to live in Portugal. And obviously the benefits, as Howard rightly said, of actually, you know, the option for your children to be educated in Europe, not necessarily in Portugal. That's quite an appealing idea for a lot of clients, particularly in SA, where they may potentially not even be considering the move. You know, a beautiful country that you have in SA. The similarities are extraordinary here in Portugal. I've enjoyed South Africa on many occasions, and it's an incredibly aligned in so many of its features. But the benefit to know that down the line your children could be educated in Europe is a very attractive consideration when looking at the visa, and that's the golden visa. And we see a lot of our clients doing the, you know, the generational planning so that those children have that option. So in summary, in our business here in Portugal, we do all things fiscal. So we prepare people for their entry into the country. We help assist with their property purchases and getting them ready to make those transactions. We have a full service concierge end-to-end support for golden visas and D7s. And we're currently looking at other flexible visa options that relate to those that want to come in and set up companies, which I know Guillem will touch on. because we are seeing, in particular from the South African communities, a lot of people setting up business here and operating their entities through here and our other jurisdictions in Europe. So I look forward to answering your questions. There's a lot of us on the panel today. There's a lot of expertise. Yeah, we look forward to working with you, and I'll hand back to you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Shelly. So I think the message there is that it's not one size fits all. You need to know which program or which visa you're going to be attempting. Forewarned is forearmed, and I think probably the best advice is actually to get a consultation with a professional like yourself to make these decisions rather than committing to something that might not work. So thanks very much for that. Next up, we have Tara Whiting. Tara is a consultant at Castellana Real Estate. She has worked mainly in the financial and luxury property markets. Tara actually was based in Cape Town for a number of years and has moved to Portugal. So again, we have first-hand experience of a person actually making this move. Tara, can you please run us through the process and considerations for one when purchasing residential property in Portugal?
Sure, Richard. I was in Cape Town for 20 years, so I miss it, but I'm very, very happy here. I think when I was really thinking about moving here, I looked around the world to see where was the most similar to Cape Town and where I could have that lifestyle, where I could live in a city and be at the beach in 20 minutes, because there's not many places, and this is one of a few that you can. Richard, just Castellana, just to tell you a little bit about Castellana property. We are one of the top 3 real estate agencies in Portugal. We're the residential arm of CBRE. We are mainly focused in Lisbon, Porto, and Cascais and the surrounding areas, but we do work all over the country. Our background of the founder was that he was an engineer in construction, so we tend to get a lot of the new buildings. We are one of the primary agencies that have the new real estate developments, which are very sought after in Portugal and have been actually the best performing in terms of investments. Are a lot of people moving here are looking at newer properties or new renovation properties. And as Howard touched on before, one of the great things about the charm of Lisbon and other areas in Portugal is they're very strict in terms of heritage. So you must protect the facade, and that keeps the character of the country and the beauty of the cities. And a lot of the developers are buying these buildings, renovating them completely on the inside, but the outside remains the same. We've seen in Portugal, the market has been a good performer, on average about 6% for the last few years, but in some of the prime areas, it's done even more than that. Throughout the pandemic and since the pandemic, what we've experienced is a lot of people, because remote working has become more viable and more of an option, people are looking around to see where they want to live as opposed to where they have to live. And Portugal has been a really great option. And we've seen, I personally have had a lot of South African clients and a lot of clients from Asia and all over really. In terms of the property yields right now that we're seeing in terms of rental returns, and if you're investing in a property, as you say very rightly, you don't have to live in the property that you buy, because you only have to come 1 week a year. You can rent it out. And you will get about 3.5%, and we're seeing that move back up to 4% where it was, and I think that that's going to continue to rise because, as Shelly mentioned, we have a lot of people moving for the D7 visa, and initially they want to rent, and we're seeing rents being pushed up for good quality stock. Just like in the rest of the world, we're seeing a shortage of good quality properties on the market, and that's been pushing prices. People that come from South Africa, where we have such beautiful properties, beautiful finishes, beautiful quality of properties, often when people come here and they look at some of the older properties, they're a little disappointed because as charming as they are, you might find that you need to renovate a kitchen or renovate a bathroom, And so people are not sure if they want to get their head around that, but it's often very good quality workmanship. It might take maybe a little bit longer, but it's about the same as South Africa, but the quality of the workmanship is excellent. In terms of the process, it's a very simple process. It's you freehold property ownership. Everybody has a lawyer. I highly suggest to do it with an agent and with a lawyer, and they're very, very thorough in terms of the process of checking the deeds, checking all of that when you go through the process. What will happen at the end, we've seen Lisbon and Porto are now going to be off the map for the golden visa and for qualifying, but there's going to be a lot of other opportunities with tourism properties, which I can tell you a little bit about, that we've got some of those. And on the more looking at the interiors, there's some beautiful areas, and still some like the Alentejo, where Howard is based, has wonderful wine and wonderful weather, and less than an hour from Lisbon. So that's just a quick summary, and I'm here to help anybody if they have any questions and want to know what it's like to move from South Africa to Lisbon. I'm always happy to help.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks, Tara. I mean, I've never been to Portugal, unfortunately, but what would be the one part of Portugal that's most similar, perhaps, to Cape Town?
I guess we see a lot of South Africans looking at areas like Cascais, and also I think I've just recently done a walk similar to what the Whale Trail in along the Hermanus coast in Alentejo, which is still valid for the golden visa. Beautiful cliffs, great seafood, and beautiful beaches, and that area in Algesur is still a valid investment area, and I think South Africans would really love it. There's some beautiful little towns there along the coast.
Oh, brilliant. You're selling me on it. Well, thanks very much. Sure. Next up, we have Guilherme Lopez. He's the Economic and Trade Counselor at the Embassy of Portugal in South Africa. Guilherme is very experienced in promoting Portugal. He was part of the Portuguese Trade and Investment Agency. He's worked in Angola, Namibia, United Arab Emirates, and Morocco. Guilherme, I'm sure, as you know, South Africa has got a very strong connection with Portugal, as Vasco da Gama discovered us before anyone else. Guilherme, can you maybe just talk us through the investment opportunities and incentives in Portugal, specifically for South Africans that are going to be moving there and wanting to do business?
Well, hi everyone. Actually, I must correct. It wasn't Vasco da Gama. It was Bartolomeu Dias that firstly came from Western Europe to the country some years before Vasco da Gama did. But it was also a Portuguese person, so there's no problem to that. So, well, I must say I really appreciate all the compliments made to my country's wines, quality, lifestyle, and quality of life. And I wish I could continue further, but in the conversation. But I'm here, I guess, to assume the role of the boring guy and deliver you some outlook of Portuguese economy, because that matters too. Let me first give you. Even before arriving to what matters to South Africans in Portugal, I think it's important to understand a little bit how things work in Portugal and how we've been doing before crisis, during crisis, and how we outlook ourselves right now. So we were obviously impacted by the pandemic crisis like the rest of the world, and we ended up applying more or less the same solutions to the same problems as most of the countries did. But I think it's fair to say that we managed to recover well and quickly given the scale of the crisis. So in terms of vaccination rates, we are nowadays with the United Arab Emirates, the country in the world with the highest rates of population vaccinated against COVID-19, with more than 87% of our population fully vaccinated, which translates to more or less 98% of the eligible population, and with the process of applying the first vaccine already underway. So the success of our vaccination strategy enabled us to resume in 2021 our growth path that had started in 2014 after a process of deep structural reforms implemented in 2011 after the economic crisis of 2008, and that registered from 2016 until 2020 a steady GDP annual growth above 2%. So our GDP growth, as I was telling you, was naturally stopped in 2020 when it fell 8.4%, mainly due to the effects of tourism sector's drop levels of activity, since tourism sector represented in 2019 more than 50% of Portuguese GDP. But we have already got up, and this year we will be growing 4.8% in line with the growth rate of the Eurozone, and 5.6% in 2022, and 2.4% in 2023, always above the expected growth rates for the Eurozone. One thing that I believe it's also important for any South African wishing to go and live and work in Portugal is the fact that we have nowadays in September 2021 an unemployment rate of 6.4%. This is the lowest rate we've had over the past 20 years, and we are 1% above 7.4 unemployment average rates of the Eurozone. This is a very good number, and the way we were able to surpass the COVID-19 pandemic effects on the economy is a very good factor. So our exports of goods up to September of this year grew 4.4%, above that registered in the same period of 2019, which was a record year for our exports, and which leaves good prospects to beat in 2021 our previous annual record. But to start answering now your question, and what I believe in a way best reflects the attractiveness of our country, are FDI numbers that we've attracted so far. So the 1.2 billion euros raised up to October this year mean that we have already beaten the previous annual record of FDI flows into the country that we had reached in 2019. So since 2015, the main sectors impacted by foreign direct investment have been the automotive and components industry, tourism, which I believe is a very good investment sector for South Africans, and the metalworking industry. During the same period, foreign business services, which is also very interesting for South African companies installed in Portugal, have more than doubled, with competence centers and software development centers now representing around 60% of total foreign business services installed in Portugal. So all this is the result of intensive work carried out in the development of four major competitive advantages to the country. First, we've got talent. So we achieved international recognition of Portuguese workforce, especially the younger generations, obviously, as a high-skilled, flexible, and adaptable labor pool with high language skills. So we ranked 7th in the English Proficiency Index of 2021 that just got out. And while employment has been growing in many sectors of the economy, highly skilled and tech-based job demand has been experiencing a boom over the past decade. And this is also due to the high-skilled labor force we've been able to import, obviously from South Africa, also from other countries like Brazil, more and more from European countries. So second factor of attractiveness, our scientific and innovative capacity, which explain the outburst of new projects or the expansion of already installed in Portugal projects on innovation and R&D. Third relevant aspect, nowadays we are increasingly perceived as a sustainable country. Let me give you a very straightforward example of our engagement on energy transition in light of recent discussions at the COP26 summit. In Portugal, we're not discussing anymore if we should be phasing down or phasing out coal-fired power plants. We will simply be shutting down on November the 30th our last coal-fired power plant, and anticipating in 9 years EU regulations and completing the national phase-out projects that we started some years ago. To give you an idea of Portuguese energy production sources cocktail in 2020, sorry, more than 60% of our power generation was already based on renewables. Fourth and last, the work that we have been carried out in recent years and allowed Portugal to receive global value chains in many sectors means that nowadays any foreign company wishing to install their factories in Portugal can do from Portugal all their sourcing activity, so from the country. So in addition to the economic data I gave you, I think it's also important to understand that Portugal is today a welcoming, safe country. We are the fourth safest country in the world, second in the EU after Denmark. A dynamic, socially and politically stable, with good climate, excellent quality of life, and friendly people, most of them perfectly capable of communicating in English. We also have very good infrastructure and excellent health system, which I think is also what allowed us to surpass so quickly COVID-19 pandemic effects. An excellent public education system, perfectly complemented by an important network of private international schools and one of the most international network of universities in the world. So, as you were mentioning, South Africa and Portugal have, in my opinion, very similar lifestyles, and South Africans have proven already to adapt well to our society and values, as Portuguese did in the past in South Africa during the 1940s and 1970s migrant waves. And to summarize what I just told you, and nowadays I believe that where South Africans can seek the best job opportunities, also in terms of their educational skills, are definitely business centers in Portugal, the tourism sector, and the agricultural sector. Those are some key sectors for Portugal. We are lacking skilled labor force in those sectors, and obviously South Africans with the good educational skills they have, their perfect English proficiency and their capability to adapt to the country, to the values of the country, make me believe that those three sectors are the most interesting for South Africans nowadays in Portugal.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Guilherme. Yeah, I know that Portugal, as South Africa, is very dependent on tourism. So hopefully this year is going to be good for our tourism industry. And also, I like that Portugal is committed to renewable energy. I like renewable energy, particularly not solar, wind energy. I'm a big fan of it.
It's more than 50% of our total cocktail.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic news. Okay, well, we've gone through all of our speakers. Now we're moving on to the question and answer session, where we pose questions to the panelists. We've been asking everyone to post their questions, and we've got quite a few coming in. First up is, I think, mainly for Shelly. Anyone else can chime in. But what is the main difference between the golden visa and the non-habitual residency regime?
Well, the golden visa is a function of actually the right to travel within the EU and a right to change to a resident should you wish to become one. The NHR is not a function of residence, it's a function of tax. So what that essentially means is that once you become a permanent resident here, you are then automatically have to be registered at the tax office. Now, as a tax resident of the country, the best regime to be registered under for that 10-year period is the NHR regime. So it's a qualification of tax that's based around the function of being resident. Clients often use the golden visa and don't become tax resident here in the first 5 years. So they are actually two separate things altogether. And the NHR, as we sort of touched on earlier, is a far more friendly tax regime for expatriates moving into the country and individuals that are bringing in wealth or potentially structuring and leaving wealth in other jurisdictions. It allows you efficiently, if you plan correctly in advance, to make sure that you have one of the most tax advantageous regimes in Europe for that first 10 years, that you are resident here. But under the golden visa regime, you do not need to become resident in that first 5-year period.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks for that. There's also been
maybe I could chime in there, because there is a lot of confusion about this NHR golden visa thing. The NHR is not an immigration status, so you cannot apply to come to Portugal using the NHR program. Once you've successfully applied to come to Portugal under one of the resident statuses, the golden visa being the most obvious, you can then apply to get a special tax status here, which you would be well advised to do if you're going to come and live here. But if you're not going to come and live here, you won't be tax resident, you will just be legally resident. And it's important to distinguish between legal residency, the right to live in a country, and tax residency. Because you can in fact become tax resident in a country without any right to live there at all, because if you continually visit as a tourist, you could become tax resident even though you have actually no right of abode. Of course, you can have the right of abode without actually living there, and therefore without becoming tax resident. So for South Africans who apply for a golden visa and don't move to Portugal, they will remain tax residents in South Africa, but have the right of legal residence in Portugal. Therefore, they will have no tax to pay in Portugal. For those South Africans who apply for a golden visa and come and live here, they will be both legally resident and tax resident. And Portugal charges tax at up to 48% on worldwide income, so all sources of income, except if you successfully apply for NHR, and it is pretty well automatic. You are then given this 10-year tax-free holiday. Terms and conditions apply. So you must structure your affairs effectively if you are to avoid Portuguese tax. Portuguese source income, so income you earn in Portugal, will be taxable in Portugal. So the NHR gives you a substantial and very attractive tax break on income that you earn outside Portugal. And naturally, South Africans coming here would have some wealth, and they can structure that so that that is not taxable, and it's extremely attractive. So it's very important to distinguish. NHR is not an immigration status. You don't apply for NHR and cannot apply for NHR until you've obtained the right to live in Portugal through one of the immigration channels, the golden visa being the most obvious. I hope that makes it clearer. It is a point of a lot of confusion.
Fantastic. Thank you. We've got another question, this time particularly about the Portuguese golden visa. And the question is it 5 years, well, what is the full time needed to get the Portuguese golden visa? Is it 5 years from the day you apply, or the day they issue residency, or is it the day you pay the money?
Actually, it's not the day you pay the money. It's the way it actually works is there's a submission of all the applications and the documentation that goes around it. And what happens is you then attend an appointment at CEF in the country. And it is at the point you attend that meeting here that they agree that all of that process and application that are submitted are accurate and correct. And it is from that point that they issue your residency cards, and that's when the day starts. So just because you've paid them the money is not when it starts, because it's when you have the appointment at the submission point when they actually see you in country. So those residency cards are issued after you've been approved by CEF in Portugal.
Brilliant, thank you. Someone's obviously done their homework, and they're asking a question, ultimately saying, with the upcoming regime changes, are there still options to buy property in coastal areas? Perhaps Shelly, you can start, and we can move on to Tara.
The way that that's going to work, and Tara can add into this, I'm sure, is yes, that is the case, but you are going to be buying into what are sort of commercial touristic developments. So you can no longer, under the old regime, which changes at the end of next month, go and buy your 5-bedroom house on the cliff overlooking the ocean. What you will be restricted to is going into those developments that are set up of a commercial nature with a touristic license or a commercial license, which then allows you to buy a unit within that development. So it's not closing off the option of you having a home in in a coastal area, but it's just being restructured as to which type of stock is available. And developers are very busy preparing stock that is in those areas that will have the correct licenses for the golden visa. And it's particularly important to check that if you are looking at that kind of asset right now and going forward, that you get external counsel to do their due diligence, that they are approved with the golden visa licensing rules.
I would also say there are these areas, the golden visa regime has changed to try and encourage investment into low density areas. So there's a few coastal areas where you, like Algesur, which is a low density area, where you still can invest in those coastal areas, but they are very small, low density areas. And that is, I think, Villa de Bispo and Monchique, closer to you, Shelly, is still, and some areas a little bit inland in Lule, but primarily we are looking at the hospitality properties. For instance, to give you an example of something we have now in Sagres, which is a great surf town and beautiful area, a unit for 550, which is 2-bedroom, on the beach. It's fully managed for you, and you get 2 weeks a year stay, and you're paid 4% guaranteed return. So those are the kind of structures that people are setting up, where you can't, in many cases, you don't have the right to live there yourself, or you will have 4, 5, 6 weeks a year there, if you want some kind of a guaranteed yield. And the rest of the time your unit will be rented out.
Yeah, and then you have areas like as Tara was saying, in Comporta, which is very close to Lisbon, which is a stunning coastline, where there are some beautiful homes, and there's some very big developers gone in there with the exclusion regime of the new regime, and there is some amazing homes that are available for you if you do want something that you can use as often as you wish. So there's still plenty of options for people coming in after the regime changes. It's not closing down, it's not disappearing. There are still options. Yeah.
I would add as well, be wary of guaranteed yields, because the guarantee is normally offered by a company with no assets, and is rarely worth the paper it's written on. Normally that company takes the property, attempts to rent it out, and uses the rental yield it gets to pay a proportion over to the owner. So if it doesn't rent it out, there's no money, and that company is not going to be able to pay the guarantee. Rarely have I seen a guarantee issued by the developer themselves who has assets. So it's nice, and the chances are you'll get the yield, but the word guarantee is in my view very spurious. An interesting point, where I'm sat in Estremoz, the threshold to obtain a golden visa here is 280,000, and you can buy a lot of property here for 280,000. By way of example, the prices in Estremoz are still well below €1,000 a square metre, which say compares with Lisbon at €10,000 a square metre for quality property there. So it won't suit everybody to be out in the sticks where I am, but Estremoz is a beautiful town. There is 26 wineries around it, fantastic countryside, historic monuments aplenty, and a very nice lifestyle if you fancy countryside living. And there's other towns as well where this applies, and 280,000 is the lowest entry level for property.
That's for a rehabilitated property. So the 350, because it's a 20% discount of the 350 golden visa, because you're in a low density area. The 280. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Then another question we've got, and it's about the visa. So Shelly and others can chime in. But Clara wants to know, if they want to go and live in Portugal right now, is the golden visa the only option?
No, there is a D7. There is a D7 visa which allows you to come in here and permanently reside here, and that's linked to passive income. So you have to prove and demonstrate that you have enough passive income to support you and your family. and that runs at just under €8,000 for the primary applicant and approximately just under 4 for the actual secondary applicant, in most cases a wife. And passive income is not salaried income. So a lot of people think they can apply for that visa on the basis of employment income, and that is not correct. So dividend income, income from interest, income from rentals, property portfolio as an example, or even renting out your home prior to living here and demonstrating that you actually have an ability to support yourself. And then that visa is renewed at the end of year 1, i.e. beginning of year 2, and again in year 3, at which point you have to become a tax resident, and the visa is issued on the back of the fact that on the renewals you can continue to demonstrate that you support yourself. You have to have a medical insurance, and essentially you have to demonstrate to the Portuguese that you are not going to be on any strain on the system here at all. So there is it's a visa solution and an immigration solution we're seeing a massive amount of interest on for those people that are coming to live here, and you have to actually be here for 6 months consecutively or 8 months non-consecutively. And therefore, if you have any reason to move out of the region for business reasons or family reasons, or there's a valid reason for you to have to leave and not adhere to that day count, then the Border Control Agency, known as CEF, is flexible with that, as long as you tell them why you're going and for what reason. So it's a very, very popular solution for clients that wish to, or for people that wish to come and live here permanently and become tax resident.
And again, you can combine that with the NHR status.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I think the D7 is the answer to that question.
Yeah, we have a lot of people from end to end with the process. We help prepare them in the country before they leave, and when they go to what is the visa control company called VFS. So most embassies around the world use VFS to prepare the visas before they're submitted to the embassies. We help our clients prepare everything that they actually need prior to that appointment. We also set them up with all of the fiscal requirements that they have to have in country, because you have to demonstrate that you have a bank account and you have a fiscal number, and that you can prove that those funds are available to you in Portugal when you arrive in country. So it's a full end-to-end service to support clients for that D7. And then once you're in country, we register you under the tax regime of NHR.
Brilliant. I see we are running very close to the end of the time, so all the questions that have been sent to us are going to be answered. Unfortunately, not live today, but we will be emailing you the answers to your questions, as well as the presentation and the recording. But maybe just one last question. South Africans are often, interested in getting, access to the rest of Europe, and this question is ultimately, would a D7 visa give one access to the rest of Europe, much like if you were a German citizen?
Yes, it does. Yeah. I mean, essentially, you're a resident in an EU country, which allows you to then go and travel into another EU country, but then that country's rules and regulations apply to you in terms of how long and how many days you can spend there. But it's actually it's a function of living and being resident in the EU. So you are able to go to any other country. Obviously, you can't just rock up in another country and start working and studying, because then you are under the regime rules of that particular entity. But from a point of view of travel, yes, you are free to do that.
That's fantastic. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much to Howard, to Shelly, to Tara, and to Guillaume. I think it's been very insightful, and I'm sure we're going to be getting a lot more inquiries coming your way. So thank you very much for joining us. I've been Richard Neal. If you have any questions or want to get in touch with any of the other speakers, these are our contact details. You don't have to scribble them down. We will be sending you this presentation, and you can get in contact with us directly. Thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.